under the Trudeau regime.
The New World Order agenda.
Canadian Insight.
Without free thought, there's no free will. We can't even say that this is Democrats or Republicans.
That is not a left-wing, right-wing issue.
C'est World Economic Forum.
Communist warfare, communist warfare, communist warfare.
Canada's reputation. Fifth generation warfare.
The line between citizen and soldier is gone.
Welcome to the Liberty North Show. I'm Simon Esler.
I'm Michael Mangoni.
And we are here to give Canadian insight into a global war.
It's a war that is referred to as fifth generation warfare today. And it's a war that many of us don't even know we're fighting. But it's important that we acknowledge that there is a war so that we can start taking our liberties back, which clearly have been eroded over the past couple of years.
Yeah, and we've been watching a lot, of the interplay between what happens in Canada versus what happens in the United States and even, out in Europe and Britain. And I think there's a lot to offer in terms of what's occurring in Canada. I've had a lot of Americans approach me about what's happening here, looking to gather insight on what may be coming down the pipeline of these globalist initiatives, because Canada seems to be, the tip of the spear for a lot of these different operations. So, I really feel like there's a lot that we can offer, not just for Canadian people, but for people around the world who have looked to Canada, a number of times throughout some of the crazier events, not just in terms of, the big push for communism and things like that here, but even the trucker convoy on the flip side was very inspiring to people. So, it'll be interesting to give some of the analysis from here in the depths of this war from the Canadian perspective.
Yeah, in communist Canada. Yeah, Canada is on the mouths of people around the world for the first time in ever, really. This tiny country, actually this huge country with a tiny population, right? It's the second largest country in the world geographically, and we have 33 million people. Italy fits into Quebec 3 times, and Italy itself has 70 million people. So it gives you a bit of the scope. So yeah, so the point being that we need to fight back because we are at war and we have these forces that will subjugate us and make us eat bugs and, destroy every liberty that we have. So that is what this show is about. Welcome along. So we're going to go over a couple videos. The first one we wanted to look at, I'll pull up. This is Robert F. Kennedy talking about Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, this is a great clip. I really thought this was thorough as hell.
Seems to be the precursor for movement into social credit scores like they have in China and more financial censorship. What would you do to prevent more people from succumbing to being debanked, which can only lead to tighter financial controls?
We saw this happen in the truckers' protest in Canada during COVID. It was very peaceful, kind of a joyous celebration. They had garbage pickup crews. They were taking care of people who didn't have enough to eat. It was really this extraordinary demonstration of community and social responsibility. And they were in Ottawa to protest the removal of rights that in the United States we take for granted, including the rights to petition your government, the rights of assembly, the rights to criticize your government. And the government of Canada, under the Trudeau regime, used surveillance techniques, including facial recognition systems, to capture the license plates of the truck to identify their owners and then to freeze all their bank accounts.
So let's maybe comment before we watch the rest of it, because he really kind of summarizes the trucker convoy very succinctly. And the craziest thing that happened at the end of this is the seizing of bank accounts of people, not only people that were there that were protesting, people that donated from afar, right? People
Single
that donated
moms.
to this. It's one of the most damaging things to Canada's reputation, I think, that has ever been done by any prime minister or any leader. But so that trucker convoy is, like you said, the reason why the US is so aware of Canada and our struggles here, because you have this totalitarian, authoritarian leader who has his head so far up his own ass that he doesn't see that what he's doing and how he's behaving is in this authoritarian style and just kind of bulldozing anybody that disagrees with him.
It was advantageous from a warfare perspective in a number of ways. Like when I was watching this happen, Trudeau and his, sort of state-run media, they really seemed to be on their heels.
Absolutely.
Excuse me. I really think it caught them off guard. what was good is that I think to a certain extent, Trudeau has been able to hide behind a facade up until that point, and he really exposed himself to the
Oh, yeah.
world. His true character was revealed to the world. So it created, some advantages for us in Canada because all of a sudden we had leaders like RFK from the States. Oh, look, I'm
Oh yeah,
celebrating right now. I'm
yeah.
celebrating
There's
the
the
convoy.
fireworks. We knew they were coming.
We knew they're coming. Hooray!
Yeah.
It's interesting to think that leaders like RFK, they were able to see what was really going on. His assessment of it being this peaceful event that was, driven by social responsibility, whereas the Canadian media worked overtime to make it seem like a Nazi white supremacist gathering. They used terminology like an occupation. They really worked hard to demonize it. And I think it's because they were caught off guard and they were caught on their heels. Ever since the convoy, I think we've had the advantage in terms of Trudeau's true character. A big facade fell away at that point, and he has really lost a lot of votership since the convoy, truthfully, because what he did was apolitically damaging. It wasn't a left-wing, right-thing. When you start using the government to shut down bank accounts, that is not a left-wing, right-wing issue. That's just basic human rights.
Oh yeah, and so you're completely right. For most of his tenure in office, so he was elected in 2015 and has served as the prime minister till now and till 2025, which is technically the next election. He has eroded our liberties and kind of slowly damaged Canada behind the scenes, but he was never up front and center making comments that really impugned him and made him seem like, it made him exposed his character. As you said, you have people like Bill Maher, who actually I'd like to watch this video that I'll pull it up, of Bill Maher quoting Trudeau and saying the quotes of him saying that these truckers are people that we shouldn't tolerate, and can we tolerate them in our country, and the people that are unvaccinated, I can't even say the word. So
yeah, he said they were often racist, misogynist, and anti-science, and we have to ask ourselves, should we tolerate them?
Like these words coming out of their mouths, they don't have the self-awareness to see that is evil. Like like your perspective, if you can even bring yourself to mouth those words, there's something within you that you need to check, because that rhetoric can lead to very dangerous things. And then he goes and says that we are divisive, or everybody else is divisive,
which is projection. And you got to look at the journey of Trudeau's character in the public eye. When he first got in office, there was all these memes of him showing up at events shirtless. He was like this like ripped shirtless prime minister. There's all sorts of
he was a
weird
pretty
memes.
boy. Yeah.
He was like the pretty boy, and there was a lot of like fawning and adoration going on when he first got into office, and like literal events where he would like come jogging out of the woods at someone's wedding without a shirt on. That's where his image started. Yeah, so
it's crazy,
so narcissistic. But his image has gone from that into that of a tyrant on the global stage, and so there's been quite a transformation. Whoever his PR people are, they have kind of dropped the ball, or he's just become too hard to manage in the public eye.
Yeah, no, there's no going back from saying things like he said, all along the way. And it's so blatant, and it's so, even people that were against, let's say, the trucker convoy, there were many people that thought that it was an occupation and drank the Kool-Aid and believed that it was these evil people. You know what? Let's watch a little video of, I have a compilation of the trucker convoy just to give an idea of what actually took place, and to show, because most people that would be listening to us know what it was, but let's just remind ourselves, because it was a beautiful gathering. It was
incredible,
as peaceful and as idealistic as a protest that you can imagine. Truly, like it was you can't ask anything more. And even that, they found a way to demonize it. They found a way to attack the character of these people who nobody really was. There was no violence. Okay, we'll watch.
Yeah, put it on.
Over the past few days, Canadians were shocked and frankly disgusted by the behavior displayed by some people protesting in our nation's capital. Hate can never be the answer. I want to be very clear. We are not intimidated by those who hurl insults and abuse at small business workers and steal food from the homeless. We won't give in to those who fly racist flags. We won't cave to those who engage in vandalism or dishonor the memory of our veterans. Tous les Canadiens ont le droit d'exprimer leur opinion ou leur désaccord avec leur gouvernement.
And the contrast
Mais
is
ils n'ont
perfect,
pas le
right?
droit de menacer
It's really well edited.
leurs concitoyens ni de propager des messages de haine. There is no place in our country for threats, violence, or hatred. So to those responsible for this behavior, it needs to stop. To anyone who joined the convoy
deluded.
but is rightly uncomfortable with the symbols of hatred and division on display, join with your fellow Canadians. Be courageous and speak out. Do not stand for or with intolerance and hate. And to Canadians at home, watching in disgust and disbelief at this behavior, wondering how this could have happened in our nation's capital after everything we've been through, the behavior on display this weekend does not represent you. Hateful rhetoric, abuse towards their fellow citizens, there's always a right to protest peacefully that I and others will defend fully as part of this democracy. There is not a right to incite violence, perform acts of violence, or to spew hatred. And I think anyone who is part of this group who is disgusted by what their folks protesting alongside are doing needs to step up and take responsibility, condemn these actions, and look for other ways to express their displeasure. Aux expressions de haine et d'intolérance qu'on a vues parmi ces manifestants, je veux remercier.
Sorry, I had to,
Wow.
but that is,
You know, it's so telling.
they're delusional. They live in an alternate reality, right?
Well, it's incredible because you can see, you know, he's always trying to spin. He's always got this rhetoric about diversity. Diversity is our strength, right? Like he says that phrase a lot. He's using all this like diversity, equity, and inclusion language. You could easily see how, if shot correctly, the convoy could have been used as an example of diversity, equity, inclusion. You had, you know, Sikh people setting up tents next to like the white people, and you had there were people even with, I saw some pride flags there. Actually, you had the veterans, you had all these different groups, this diversity. It was kind of a dream in their sort
Really?
of woke world. So they had to work hard to spin it. The spin had to be so aggressive because it actually did fit in with this idea of unity across, you know, points of division in Canada. I remember a really powerful video of the unvaccinated and vaccinated standing together. People with two different signs saying, we don't care which one of us is vaxxed, unvaxxed. We're here, you know, to stand for Canadian freedoms. All of that really disrupted their narrative. You know, the controlled media here in Canada, it got to the point where actually even the corrupt New York Times ended up in a debate with CBC on Twitter because the New York Times reported that some of the people at the convoy got arrested at gunpoint. CBC then tried to say that the New York Times was spreading disinformation. And so the journalists from the New York Times had to hit them back saying, I was in Ottawa. These are my photos. Look for yourself. And it's all photos of people being arrested at gunpoint at that peaceful event. So it really got to the point where even the corrupt American media was standing for the truth in the face of the propagandists here in Canada.
That's so telling as a story because they do this everywhere. I mean, they do this everywhere on the left in the US, in Brazil, you know, this media manipulation, it happens everywhere. It's just, they alter reality for people. And this one, not a lot of people bought it, you know, around the world. You had everybody talking about how Trudeau is a tyrant, how Trudeau is oppressing his people. And then he goes and says that he's for diversity. And you're exactly right. This was Canada is the most diverse country in the world, I believe. I don't know if that can be proven by fact, but if you go to Montreal, where I am, and Toronto as well, you can find every nationality on the planet.
Yeah.
Every single nationality, you can find it in Montreal or Canada. This gathering was everybody. And again, like you said, I think that probably upwards of 50% of the people at the trucker convoy were vaccinated. So
Yeah.
This was not about being vaccinated or unvaccinated. This is about a government that is overreaching and abusing the power that they don't actually have, right?
Yeah.
Calling the Emergencies Act, it made it made you understand how much of a farce Canada has become and the government has become, but also how easily manipulatable the legal system is, because they can just say, oh yes, the Emergencies Act is warranted because of this, this, and this. There's no reason whatsoever the Emergencies Act was warranted.
No, not at all. Not at all. And that's what I like about RFK's assessment. He's rightfully saying the Trudeau regime.
Yeah.
You know, he's using the correct language in his assessment of what occurred. And it's not hyperbole at all. You know,
and what we have to understand too is that Trudeau, he is a big opponent, if you will, or a big member at the WEF, right?
Yeah.
And these world organizations, and he is backed by George Soros. George Soros actually has close ties with Chrystia Freeland and has definitely backed Trudeau, and well, monetarily, and also has met with him multiple times. But so it's the same situation happening in Canada, in France, in the US, in Brazil, in Argentina. Argentina now finally Javier Milei won, and that has a lot to do with the way they conducted the election. They conducted the election with all paper ballots. But so this subversion of our political system and of our politicians is happening all over the world. And Canada, so we're giving the perspective from Canada, which is a very poignant one, because we are perfect example of a Western country. We are essentially as liberty oriented and minded as any other country in the West, but particularly the US. And this is where it can lead to if you allow your politicians to run amok and to, you know, take your liberties one after another. I think that the Second Amendment is really what has stopped the US from becoming what Canada is now. But the US is very much on the same path.
Yep, 100%. And I think, you know, watching the response of Canadians to the convoy, there was kind of an awakening. I know that for me, it was like one of the biggest moments of national pride I had ever felt. And there was a complacency that Canadians were shaken out of. And this is important. And I think we have to get very strategic, because our politicians are using warfare, right? They're using intense, targeted psychological warfare when they use propaganda in the media, in the way that Justin Trudeau is speaking. All of this can be assigned the term psychological warfare. And there are documents showing that even the Canadian military, you know, worked on psychological warfare programs during COVID and agreed that behavioral modification sciences needed to be used on the Canadian populace. So recognizing that, I think that the standing up against all of this, it has to be within that context of fifth generation warfare that seems to be everyday life, but that is truly, you know, rightfully called warfare. And in Canada, our struggle is that we have this smaller population that's more spread out. And so I think there's some obstacles to overcome, whereas the population density in the US, there are some advantages there to sort of boots on the ground grassroots movements when you have 300 million people that can gather versus, you know, 30 million people that can gather. It's very different, you know, the tactics we have to apply.
Yeah, and because it's so far out, I mean, that's why it's that much more impressive that there was this trucker convoy. Do you need to go?
My family has arrived, so we do have to wrap up. But
we'll wrap this one up, and we'll be back for another one. We're going to be doing this weekly, so if you're here and you stay to the end, thank you for tuning in. We got plenty more. Just to summarize, kind of what you just mentioned, or not to summarize, but to put it in more context, we need to look at everything that we are seeing through the context of fifth generation warfare and go from there. Because, and you're working on some projects to do with fifth generation warfare.
Yep.
It's happening, and we need to make sure that we are analyzing their tactics and using them against them if we can.
Yeah, and actually, I just put out a short documentary identifying the communist warfare that is ongoing in Canada. It's called Canada's Red Shadow, and that's for free. You can watch that on my Twitter and on my Instagram or on my website, which you can go to simonesso.com or daughtersofthewestfilm.com, and you can check that out. And yes, I'm working on a docuseries that's going to look at the evolution of war and the cognitive battlefield. So lots to come on that in this show and in pretty much everything I'm doing.
Yeah. No, you got a lot on your plate. And we're going to be doing a watch party tonight live. I don't know if anybody's going to be seeing this before tonight, but I'm excited to see that as well. So yeah, Simon, let's wrap this one up, and we'll see each other on the next one.
Yes, see y'all next time.
The World Economic Forum.
Communist warfare. Canada's reputation. Fifth generation warfare.
The line between citizen and soldier is gone.